Fear reigns in Riverside Falls with the deafening sound of motorcycles. A gang dominates the streets, imposing terror at every turn. Jason Statham appears discreetly, but soon ends up crossing the bikers' path. A confrontation between them is inevitable. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified whenever there are new stories on the channel. The hot afternoon sun illuminated the landscape of Riverside Falls, a small town in the interior of the United States that, at first glance, seemed to have stood still in time. Old houses with weathered facades lined the main street, while the locals carried on at their leisurely pace. Old cars passed by from time to time, and the few tourists who came by were looking for an atmosphere of tradition and calm. However, that week in particular, a rumor was going around town. A group of bikers had arrived unannounced, bringing trouble and tension wherever they went. Jason Statham parked his grey pickup in front of a modest cafe on his way to visit a distant friend who lived several hours away. He got out of the vehicle calmly, wearing jeans, worn boots, and a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. His face bore a serene, but at the same time watchful expression, as if something in the air was alerting him. He was recognized by many as a skilled actor and fighter, but there he was, just another foreigner arriving in a forgotten little town. Before entering the cafe, he noticed 4 motorcycles parked across the street. Each of them bore distinctive symbols on their sides, while black helmets hung from their handlebars. They looked like predators ready for any occasion. Jason didn't pay much attention. After all, he was hungry. He opened the door of the establishment and was greeted by the sound of a small bell announcing the entrance of a customer. Inside, the place exuded a pleasant aroma of fresh coffee and apple pie. There were few tables, all dark wood, and only 3 people occupied the room. The waitress, a light-eyed young blonde called Sarah Anderson, was slightly startled to see Jason enter. He smiled warmly. "Good afternoon," said Jason, looking for a free table. Sarah guided him to a corner near the window. "Have a seat wherever you like," she said, her voice a little tense but kind. "It's kind of empty today, or rather, lately." Jason noticed that something was bothering her, but didn't insist on asking. He sat down, ordered a coffee, and watched the movement on the street through the dusty glass. There were hardly any pedestrians outside. Everyone seemed to be hiding behind the closed doors of their houses or stores. There was an atmosphere of tension in the air that he couldn't ignore. While he was waiting for his drink, 4 men burst into the cafe. From their leather vests and boots, they were probably the owners of the motorcycles Jason had spotted outside. The leader of the group, an athletic man with a scar on his eyebrow, wore a vest with the name Grant Myers stitched on it in red. The other 3 followed close behind. Paul Sanders, a short but muscular man, Chase Miller, tall and with several tattoos on his arms, and Leo Brown, who wore a suspicious look and clenched fists. Without asking permission, Grant approached the counter and knocked hard on the wooden top. "Hey Sarah, bring us 4 coffees. And don't be long, I'm running out of patience today." Sarah forced a nervous smile. "Sure, I'll get it ready." Grant and his cronies milled around the cafe. Paul settled into a chair, stretching out his legs so that they almost blocked the passage. Chase leaned on the jukebox, pretending to look for a song, but was visibly fiddling with the settings carelessly. Leo just stood there, arms crossed, as if he was ready for a fight. Jason, in his corner, watched everything in silence. He didn't like getting into trouble for nothing, but he knew a hostile atmosphere when he saw one. Meanwhile, Sarah was preparing the coffees with trembling hands. She tried to make conversation. "Do you want sugar or sweetener?" Paul laughed out loud. "Look, that's cute. Whatever, sweetie, just don't wind me up." It was clear that the bikers felt they owned the place and the situation. When Sarah brought the drinks, Chase looked her up and down with a debauched look. "That coffee looks thin. Don't you have something stronger?" She didn't answer, just took a few steps back. Just then, Grant noticed Jason alone at the table. His gaze narrowed as he recognized the world-famous face, although he wasn't sure if it was really who he thought it was. He decided to take the test. "Hey, are you enjoying our little roadside cafe?" Or did you just come to watch us? Jason looked up calmly and answered politely, "It's good coffee. And no, I didn't come to watch anyone. I'm just passing through." Paul, sitting near the counter, laughed a little. "Look at the guy's accent, full of shit. Thinks he's tough because he's wearing a leather jacket." "I don't want any trouble," Jason said seriously, but without changing his voice. "I just want to drink my coffee in peace." Grant approached, pulling up a chair to sit in front of Jason uninvited. "You don't want any trouble, but you've come to the wrong place at the wrong time, my friend." Jason sighed, running a hand over the back of his neck. He had seen this scene in many places around the world. Aggressive men, full of arrogance, who tested other people's limits in order to assert their superiority. He remembered previous episodes in which he had had to defend himself. Thanks to his own training and discipline, he had always been able to maintain control. But he didn't like gratuitous violence, especially in an environment where innocent people could be hurt. "I can get up, pay and leave," Jason suggested. "I've got nothing against you," Grant laughed loudly. "Come on, but I have something against people who pose like movie stars." Hearing that made the whole cafe fall silent. Leo and Chase exchanged glances, realizing that the leader was eager to pick a fight. Paul snorted, getting up too. The full atmosphere became stifling. Sarah watched nervously from afar. She approached Jason and tried to intervene. "Sir, maybe I should bring your bill. Maybe you can come back another day when you're more calm." Jason looked at her sympathetically. "Don't worry about me, but thank you." Grant crossed his arms and teasingly put his foot on Jason's desk, almost knocking over his cup. "The girl's right. You shouldn't be here. Learn to stay out of the way." Jason spoke again, low and firm. "I didn't get involved in anything. I just want to respect this place and the people who work here. In fact, you're being very disrespectful." The provocation lit a fuse in Grant. He slammed his hand on the table and stood up. "You're calling me disrespectful in front of everyone, you..." "Hey!" A gentleman's voice was heard in the corner of the cafe. It was Kevin Owens, a long-time resident of Riverside Falls, sitting at one of the tables. "We just want peace. Leave that man alone." Paul stood up and threw his chair aside as if he was going to lunge at Kevin. "And who are you to run anything, old man?" Jason felt his blood boil. He had seen many injustices in his life, and the more he saw, the less he could stand. He stood up abruptly. His coffee cup rattled, but didn't fall. His gaze went steadily over the group of bikers. "I don't suggest you do that," said Jason, staring at Paul. "Not with him, not with the waitress, not with anyone in here." Grant laughed cynically. "And what are you going to do about it? Is an actor going to hit me with an award statuette?" Jason didn't move a muscle. Don't underestimate someone without knowing what they're capable of. There was a second's hesitation. Chase, behind the counter, gave Grant a doubtful look. Leo, still with his arms folded, didn't know whether to interfere or wait for a command from the leader. Then, as if it were his duty to prove a point, Grant went for Jason. He intended to grab his neck and throw him to the ground, but Jason moved like lightning. With surprising agility, Jason controlled Grant's arm and used his opponent's own momentum to throw him against the table. The crash was loud and all the glasses shook. Grant crashed to the surface, dizzy. Paul opened his eyes wide and threw a direct punch at Jason. Another mistake. Jason dodged to the side and struck back with a quick blow to Paul's stomach. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. Chase, terrified, grabbed a stool to use as a weapon. He lunged forward, but Jason blocked the seat, delivering an elbow that knocked the biker off balance, causing him to topple over some glasses that fell to the ground. Leo, for his part, hesitated for a moment, but his rage spoke louder. He launched a kick, which Jason deflected as if anticipating his every move. In a clean counter, Jason applied an arm lock. Leo groaned in pain until he involuntarily let out a breath. The fight lasted no more than a few seconds, but the damage was enough to To turn everyone's attention, Sarah took cover behind the counter, her heart racing. Kevin Owens held his hat in his hand, dumbfounded. Those on the street also heard the noise and looked out of the window in amazement. The bikers slowly got up, pained and humiliated. Grant, furious, wiped his hand across his bleeding mouth. "It won't stay that way, you bastard. We don't like outsiders playing the hero." Jason kept his posture upright, his breathing controlled. "I'm not a hero, but I'm not going to stand by while you threaten defenseless people." Grant aimed a hateful glare at Sarah and Kevin, then at Jason. "You'll regret messing with us. And you, Statham, think you're so tough. Wait and see." He signaled to the others, and they all rushed out of the cafe, leaving a trail of fallen chairs and cracked glass. When the door closed, a heavy silence dominated. Sarah left the counter and walked over to Jason, still trembling. "Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. They come here almost every day, thinking they run the town. But they've never crossed the line like this before." Kevin agreed. "It's true. We're tired of putting up with them. But we're afraid. They're violent, unpredictable." Jason sighed. "I understand. But maybe now you'll realize that you can't act with impunity. I suggest you be careful. I don't doubt that they'll be back." He looked at Sarah, worried. "Are you all right?" She nodded, even though her eyes were still watery. "I am. I just need to calm down. Thank you, really." Jason, trying not to attract any more attention, pulled out his wallet and left a few bills on the counter. "That should pay for the coffee and any damage I may have caused by fighting back. If you need more, let me know. You didn't cause any damage." They did, but thank you all the same, Sarah insisted. He gave a slight smile. "Make sure everyone stays safe. I should probably get going, but I wouldn't feel right leaving you in this situation." Kevin gave her a hopeful look. "Look, I don't like leaning on outsiders, but if you can help, at least until we figure out how to resolve this gang's presence, we'd be very grateful." Jason thought for a moment. Was it wise to stay? He had commitments further down the line, but the state of tension in the city bothered him. He remembered the values he had always defended in his films and in the fight training he had received throughout his life. Discipline, respect, empathy. If he left now, who would those residents turn to? "I'll stay a few days," Jason decided. "If they come back, we'll see what can be done." That night, Jason got a modest room in the hostel of Laura Mitchell, a middle-aged widow who lived alone. She had recognized the famous visitor, but respected his privacy by not asking too many questions. The house was simple, but welcoming. Before going to bed, Jason watched the dark night through the window, reflecting on where the story was going. The next day, as he walked through the streets of Riverside Falls, he noticed the curiosity of the locals. Some greeted him shyly, others whispered among themselves, pointing in disguise. The news about the fight with Grant's gang had spread like wildfire. Sarah, who was passing in front of the local market, approached him with a shy smile. "Hi, how are you? Thanks for deciding to stay a while. I feel a bit safer." Jason returned the smile. "I hope I haven't caused you any trouble. Do you know if they've shown up again?" She shook her head. "Not yet. But when they do, they tend to hang around the outskirts of the city. Sometimes they make noise in the parking lots and, well, everyone gets a little worried." They talked for a few minutes until Michael Hayes, the Riverside Falls police chief, came to meet them. Michael was a man with tired features, but a determined look. "You must be Jason Statham, right? I heard about the mess at the cafe. I'm sorry I didn't show up sooner. We're short on cops and have a lot of calls in the area." Jason greeted him with a firm handshake. "I understand. These things happen." Michael sighed. "Unfortunately, Grant and his gang are known for intimidating small towns. We don't have the structure to arrest them without solid evidence, and many people are afraid to testify. But I hear you took matters into your own hands. They attacked first, Jason explained. I just defended myself. Sarah confirmed with a nod. If it hadn't been for him, they would have done more damage. Michael thoughtfully scratched his chin. Maybe we can act more strategically. If I have some written testimony, I can try a legal approach. But there's a shortage of people willing to expose themselves. Jason saw the indecision in the policeman's eyes. In any case, count on me for whatever you need. I won't run away if they show up. Days passed in relative calm, but fear hung over the streets. Some stores closed early, and people avoided going out at night. Kevin Owens, who had witnessed the fight, was now worried about possible retaliation. One evening, Jason and Sarah were chatting in front of the cafe while she closed the doors. That's when the loud roar of engines was heard in the distance. Motorcycles came hurtling down the main avenue. Grant, Paul, Chase, and Leo, followed by two more new members that Jason didn't know. They parked in front of the cafe, blocking the sidewalk. Grant got off his bike, glaring at Jason. I thought you'd gone, movie star, but apparently you like a challenge. Will you stop it? Sarah ordered, her voice shaking. Please, leave us alone. Grant ignored her and pointed at Jason. You think you're the town hero, don't you? Here to save these poor bastards. Well, you'd better think again. Jason remained firm but cautious. I'm here because I don't tolerate cowardice. Did you come just to threaten? Leo growled. It's not a threat, it's a warning. If the people of this town don't respect us, we'll make sure we teach them all a lesson. Grant looked at Sarah. What a shame this cafe will lose its clientele. Could it withstand an accidental fire? That comment was the limit. Jason stepped forward, his fists clenched. Don't you dare! Before the confrontation could begin, distant sirens echoed in the street. Michael Hayes arrived in his car, accompanied by two more police officers. The police presence made the bikers hesitate. Grant narrowed his eyes. We're leaving, for now, but don't think it's over. They sped off, disappearing down the street. Michael got out of the car, frustrated at not being able to catch them in the act. It was the right time, but it didn't do much good, he lamented. I still haven't caught them in the act. Sarah, pale, tried to hold back tears. They threatened to burn down my cafe. It's my family's livelihood. Jason took a deep breath, putting a hand on her shoulder. They won't do anything while we're watching. They just want to intimidate. Michael agreed. I'll step up the night watch, but we need the whole city to come together to report it. I can't do much on my own. Despite the tensions, life went on. Jason volunteered to help protect the cafe, along with some volunteers from the town. Kevin, even in his old age, showed courage by watching the streets. As the days went by, Jason's reputation as a protector grew, and this began to generate dissatisfaction in Grant himself, who saw Jason's popularity as a threat to his authority through intimidation. One evening, Jason was on his way back from Laura's Inn, crossing the dimly lit street, when he noticed two shadows approaching. Paul and Chase surprised him from behind, trying to trap him in an ambush. Paul muttered, "No, more playing the good guy, Statham." This time, the fight was fiercer, as the two came armed with chains and iron bars. Jason dodged the blows with difficulty, using all his knowledge of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. He blocked Paul's chain and landed a side kick on Chase. The fight was long, the sound of the blows echoing in the deserted street. Even though he was skilled, Jason felt his shoulder protest as he dodged a stronger blow. When he finally managed to take down both attackers, Leo came running across the street, but hesitated when he saw his fallen partners. Paul was groaning in pain, clutching his ribs, and Chase could barely stand. Leo hurriedly caught up with them, fleeing before Michael or anyone else showed up. Jason, exhausted, leaned against a wall, breathing hard. The next morning, the whole town heard about the cowardly attack. Sarah went to visit Jason at the inn, carrying a bandage for his shoulder. He greeted her with a grateful smile, although he felt the stab of pain as he moved his arm. "It's all right. Nothing a few hot compresses won't fix." "They almost really hurt you," said Sarah, worried. "It's not fair." Jason shook his head. "When you're dealing with people like that, they don't play fair, but they won't scare me." However, the intensity of the conflicts escalated to a critical point. The following afternoon, a fire broke out in the garage of Bill Carter, another veteran of the town. The fire spread quickly. Fortunately, the firefighters managed to contain the flames before they destroyed the entire block. But the comments were unanimous. It could only have been retaliation by the gang. Consumed by anger and a sense of justice, Jason sought out Michael, Hayes. They torched Bill's workshop. "It's time we did something." Michael nodded. "I agree. We investigated the tire tracks near the scene, and although it's not enough proof, we have elements of suspicion. If you can get any of the bikers to confess or any of the residents to testify directly, we can take action." Jason decided to take the risk himself. Convinced that he had to solve this and prevent further tragedies, he began to probe for information about the gang. He found out from acquaintances about the bar where they used to meet on Friday nights. It was located on a secluded road, out of sight of the Riverside Falls patrols. Jason told Kevin and Sarah the idea. "Maybe I can convince them to stop doing this. If they know they have no support, they might back down. Or, at the very least, they'll admit guilt." "It's risky," said Sarah. "They could be violent." Kevin sighed, worried. "But the city can't live hostage to that fear. Maybe it's the only way." On Friday night, Jason drove to the Rusty Horseshoe Bar, a remote place surrounded by motorcycles parked in the dark. The interior was lit by dim bulbs, and an old jukebox played heavy rock. A few bikers scattered around the tables were drinking and talking loudly. Among them, Grant stood at the bar, beer bottle in hand, laughing at something Paul was saying. As soon as Jason entered, the bar suddenly fell silent. Looks of surprise and threat turned to him. Grant put down the bottle, standing up slowly. "You've got the nerve to show up here alone, huh?" Jason took a few steps forward, keeping his chin up. "I didn't come to fight. I want to talk to you." Grant let out a laugh that reverberated around the room. "Talk? After everything? You think we're open to talking?" A few cronies surrounded the place. Jason noted that there were at least 8 men there, counting the ones he knew. "I want to understand what you get out of threatening this small town. Why didn't you move on and find somewhere else to drink? Or whatever it is you do?" Grant twitched the scar on his eyebrow. "Do you think we do this for sport? I need to support my gang. We get favors in exchange for protection, you know. Everyone pays us not to suffer. That's how the real world works, Star." Jason crossed his arms. "Nothing justifies terrorizing innocent people or burning down businesses. That's cowardice." Paul, standing next to Grant, showed the fight marks on his arm. "You humiliated us. Now you want to lecture us? It doesn't justify destroying the city. You've done enough to prove that you're dangerous, but you could end up in jail," Jason insisted. "It's time to take a step back." Grant clenched his fists. "I don't bow down to anyone, least of all a guy who thinks he fights well. We rule the road, and whoever gets in the way pays the price." It was at that moment that one of the gang's recruits, Travis Hall, raised his voice, visibly sweating. "Grant, this isn't right. I didn't sign up for this setting fire to a garage, hurting innocent people. I thought it was just a group that liked speed and the road." Grant turned around, furious. "Are you saying you're sorry, Travis?" Travis shot a quick glance at Jason. "It's not regret, it's conscience." This caused a stir among the bikers. Some looked at each other nervously. It was clear that many of them didn't agree with extreme acts, but were afraid of contradicting. Their leader, Jason, saw the crack in their loyalty. "This is your chance to put an end to it," Jason said firmly. "Cooperate with the police, confess what happened in Bill's workshop, and clear the bar while you still can." Grant raised his bottle, pointing at Travis. "Keep your mouth shut if you don't want any trouble." He looked at Jason with hatred. And to hell with you. You're playing the savior, but you'll get nothing but a beating. Jason didn't back down. Jason didn't back down. If that's the way you want it. Grant left in a rage. The bar was taken over by a chaos of shattered glasses and overturned tables. A few bikers tried to join the fray, but Travis held them back, saying enough was enough with the violence. Jason and Grant were fighting a tough match. They both knew how to hit, and Grant's anger made him even more dangerous. But Jason maintained his precision, blocking and counterattacking in a calculated manner. At the height of the battle, Grant threw a punch that grazed Jason's face, opening his eyebrow. In response, Jason hit him square in the jaw. Grant staggered, dazed. It was clear that the fight would end there. Paul and Chase hesitated. Would they risk getting involved or let the leader go down alone? Travis finally pulled Grant by the arm, asking him to stop. "Enough, Grant. That's enough." Grant, gasping for breath, spat out blood and looked around. He saw that most of the members were no longer willing to continue the aggression. The gang was fragmenting, and his illusion of power was collapsing in front of everyone. Jason took a step back. "It's your choice. Continue down this path and end up in jail or worse, or face up to your mistakes and try something new. You can leave here and go on to another life." Grant punched a table in anger, but there was no denying his defeat. "That's a joke." Before they could continue, police sirens echoed. Outside, Michael Hayes entered, accompanied by state reinforcements. At this point, Travis and two other bikers raised their hands in surrender. Paul and Chase lowered their heads without reaction. Grant still tried to resist, but Michael pointed his gun at him. "Stay down now!" There was no choice. Within minutes, Michael searched the place and ordered Grant's arrest on suspicion of arson and assault, along with Paul and Chase. Some members, like Travis, were willing to testify in exchange for lesser sentences. As he handcuffed Grant, Michael looked at Jason with respect. "You took a big risk." "Thank you," said the officer. "Thanks to Travis's testimony and the other evidence we've gotten, we'll have a solid case against the gang." Jason wiped the blood from his brow with a handkerchief offered by one of the officers. "I'm glad it's over. Nobody deserves to live under threat." Grant walked past in handcuffs, casting a look of hatred mixed with frustration. "That doesn't change anything. You think you're the good guys, but the world is cruel," Jason followed them out without saying a word. Now was not the time to discuss philosophy. The fact was that Riverside Falls was free of the terror that had prevailed for months. News of the arrest of Grant and his gang spread quickly. Within a few weeks, the town of Riverside Falls had returned to its tranquility. Sarah's Cafe was once again welcoming customers without fear. Bill's workshop was refurbished with community help, and Kevin Owens began organizing volunteer patrols in partnership with Michael Hayes. Jason recovered from his injuries, saying goodbye to everyone with gratitude. The morning he left, Sarah handed him a cup of coffee to go. "I know you're leaving now, but if you need a corner to rest, you can come back. We'll miss you." He smiled. "Thank you. You've taken me in, more than I could have asked for. I only did what I thought was right." Kevin appeared, shaking Jason's hand. "You reminded us that unity and courage can overcome fear. Thanks, kid." Jason put the luggage in the back of the truck and started it up. But before he hit the gas, he left one last message. "Remember to stand firm. Don't let people like this steal what you have best: compassion and solidarity." As the vehicle sped away down the road, the sun shone brightly over Riverside Falls, as if finally illuminating a new phase for the town. The people there have learned that sometimes the solution to oppression comes from where you least expect it, and that uniting around values like empathy and respect is the only way to overcome the shadows that threaten peaceful coexistence. Jason Statham's legacy didn't just remain in the accounts of his mastery of the fighting arts. It remains as living proof that courage can inspire genuine change. He went on his way, without fanfare or boasting, carrying in his chest the certainty that he had made a difference to those who needed it most. And for every person in Riverside Falls, the greatest lesson was to understand that there is no lasting victory without unity and compassion, because even in the face of violence, it is possible to stand up with honor, reach out to others, and make good prevail.